What's up, everyone? This is Destroyer229, and welcome back to Let's Play Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, Justice for All. Last time, we started our cross-examination with Adrian Andrews. Did pretty well up until a just sudden twist reveal that there was a second costume. But Phoenix kind of made it make a bit more sense. Where the guitar had the spare costume of the Nickel Samurai. I always want to say Steel Samurai. I know I said Steel Samurai a lot in this case already. One had a spare costume of the Nickel Samurai that he was going to use for the press conference. And somehow still ended up being murdered, with Adrian walking out of that room with the costume, or at least, well, that's, Now actually saying it out loud is making me think, well, hold on a sec. If that's the case, he opened up the costume, she must have killed him, but she also had the knife with her at the time, but oh god, this is just so much more confusing now that I actually stopped to think about it. Because Adrian needed to have the knife with her, which he would have already needed the costume for. The strangulation. Okay, I'm starting to maybe see how this can be pieced together. Anyway, this episode we're going to continue the cross-examination for this. But she killed him with the strangulation, wore the costume, went back to Matt's room, went back over there with his knife to then stab Juan with it to frame Matt. That's what probably ended up happening. Okay. As for the tomato juice, it's probably actually wine or something like that in Japanese, but this is E for everyone, or E10 or whatever. Okay. So, yeah, that's probably what ended up happening, or at least that's my running theory right now. She strangled him to death when he opened it up to reveal the costume. They got into an altercation. She strangled him to death. Then dressed up as the Nickel Samurai, went back, grabbed the knife, came back, and then stabbed him with it. Took the button to then frame Matt again. Put the wine glass to basically be her own alibi. That, no, she was the one to put it there. That, or she did that afterwards when getting out of that costume. Oh, jeez, this just got so much more complicated, so much faster. Okay. Maybe before I try to put everything together, let's try just pressing. Alright, so as a refresher, from the moment I saw the crime scene, I had a feeling that Matt was the killer. Matt had to kill Juan, and he didn't have an alibi. My thoughts were confirmed by evidence, which were the button and the knife, which in our case, she's the one that planted that. But I'm Matt's manager, so I had to protect him, and that's why she's so scatterbrained and not been the most forthcoming. Okay, let's press everything and then go from there. Would you say that was your intuition speaking to you? Don't confuse my methods of reasoning with your own. Ugh. If you want to prove that someone did something, you need 3 things. 3 things? What were the 3 things? It's like white roses, top hat, cape, or something like cloak. Cloak was it. Those 3 things. A motive, an opportunity to commit the crime, and finally, decisive evidence. And if you think these 3 things through, the answer becomes quite clear. You should have already known that, Phoenix. They didn't teach us that in school. At least not from what I remember. May I continue now? Alright, Matt had to kill Juan. But how would Matt have known that Juan knew about whatever this deep, dark secret is? That's probably trying to relate back to Celeste. So would you say this need came from the press conference? Yes. Do you know why Juan chose that event and that hotel for the conference? because that was when he could cause the most damage to the public's beloved Matt on guard. And you knew of this plan, didn't you, Miss Andrews? Yes, because I was the one who set up the conference and prepared the costume. But I'm sure Mr. Ungard himself didn't know anything about the press conference. Oh, really? Can you show me any proof that you didn't know about the press conference? Anyway, the important thing here is that this information was not in your testimony. Yes, I agree. Miss Andrews, please correct your testimony, if you please. Grasping at straws now, are we, Mr. Wright? Okay, I think we got something. I know what his motive was, but I don't have any way to prove that I'm right. Okay. So that changed that. So that's probably what we're going to need to press on in terms of presenting evidence. But speaking of press, let's press this. Has Mr. Ungard done something to hurt or betray you personally? Why do you ask? You were the one who helped Mr. Kurita with his press conference. And that event was supposed to bring down Mr. Ungard. Yet, you still helped out. The person on trial right now is Mr. Ungard, right? What the witness was thinking, helping the victim with his plan, is none of our concern. In any case, this means that the defendant had a motive to kill. Why do I keep doing this to myself? Because we need information, Phoenix. Okay. I know what his motive was, but I don't have any way to prove it. Okay, well, let's press on. Maybe we'll find something. Maybe it'll update certain evidence to help with that. He didn't have an alibi for what he was doing. Sounds familiar. But didn't you already testify earlier that Mr. Ungard was taking a nap in his room? Are you telling me now that that too was a lie, so you could cover for Mr. Ungard? I'm not telling you anything of the sort. When I went to get him for the show, he honestly was sleeping. However, as to whether he was sleeping the entire time, that I cannot say. I was too busy setting up the stage at the time. I keep trying, but I can find no flaws with what Miss Andrews has said. I can't say the same for some people here in this courtroom, however. The judge is glaring straight at me, He's glaring at you, smartass! She definitely would have said smartass if this game was T for teen, which is why I said it that way. My thoughts were confused by the evidence, of course. Thoughts were, Jesus, my brain is being weird. My thoughts were confirmed by the evidence. Button and knife. You can hardly call the knife decisive evidence. The fingerprints on the knife could very well be a clever camouflage. Then what about the button? The button? It's clear from the crime scene that the victim and his murderer fought. And during the fight, the killer ripped the button from the Jammin' Ninja's costume. You're talking about this button, correct? That button was found in the pleats of Matt's hakama, isn't that correct? I would think that makes it very decisive evidence. Ugh, but he was sleeping! Could have easily been planted there! Looks like you were outfoxed again, Mr. Wright. Anyway, the knife doesn't prove a thing. Please fix your testimony. I can't stand the sight of a man who can't gracefully accept his defeat. Thank goodness Mia can still look at me. With an icy stare, yes. Miss Andrews, for Mr. Wright's sake, please add this information to your testimony. Ooh, 2 things. Okay. We don't know what the motive was, but I don't have any way to prove it. That button was torn off of Juan during his fight with Matt. Press that one now. And how do you know that? When the ends of the threads on the button and the costume were matched up, they were found to fit together perfectly. Or so I heard. I've heard that before too. But why would Miss Andrews know about this case down to such a fine detail? Don't look at me like that, just because I'm prepared and you're not. Ugh. I thought I had her this time for sure. If there's anything to trip her up on, it has to be here. But where and what? Okay. So the button... But then this one was also updated. I know what the motive was, but I don't have any way to prove it. The button was torn off of one. Matt's man. Okay, well, let's press this one. But what you really did was stab the guy in the back, didn't you? And at the worst possible time. Who's to say she really stabbed the guy in the back, as you put it? This witness could have disclosed things about Mr. On Guard at any time. Why then would she wait until there was a large audience before doing so? It's the same reason why Mr. Kurita planned such an elaborate conference. Miss Andrews wanted to cause Mr. On Guard as much damage as she possibly could. This witness bears ill will towards the defendant. This isn't the Phoenix Wright Wax Philosophical Power Hour. And please, stop slandering the witness. As I expected, Miss Andrews' testimony seems pretty solid. Oh wait, no, that was Phoenix. Really? Because to me, it sounded a little wishy-washy. Wishy-washy? Well, I guess we'll see if I press a little more. You should know this by now. But you'll need strong, decisive evidence to make her talk. Got it, Chief! I'm gonna pin you down this time, Miss Andrews. Okay, so... I do get the feeling we need to update both of those. I know what the motive was, but I don't have any way to prove it. Okay, so nothing really there, but I feel like this needed to update to make a contradiction here. The button was torn off of Juan during his fight with Matt. Let's see. If there's anything to trip her up on, it has to be here, but where and what? Okay. The button was torn off of Juan during his fight with Matt. I mean, would it have to be the autopsy report? Because it was strangulation. I did not mean to press, but I'm glad I was on there. Okay. I very much hit the wrong button, but it looks like I was right. This is the victim's autopsy report. It clearly states that the cause of death was strangulation by a scarf. Strangulation? The knife stab to the victim was done after the victim had already died. And what does that mean? Let's examine the evidence. This button has the victim's blood on it, which would mean that it was ripped off of the costume. When? After the knife was stabbed into the victim. Exactly, which means... it is impossible that this button was torn off during the victim's final struggle. Because the victim was strangled to death in that fight! That's right, Miss Andrews. There is no way this button was ripped off during the struggle. This button was consciously pulled off of the victim's already dead body. Order! Order! What is the meaning? What is the meaning of this right? So what if the button was torn off the body after the victim had already died? What does that change? Let me ask you one simple question, Mr. Edgeworth. Why was the button torn off? What purpose did that serve? What purpose? We now know this button was not torn off during the fight. so the murderer took the time and effort to purposefully rip this from the victim's body. That would mean that the murderer had something in mind, wouldn't it? Mr. Wright, does this mean you know what the murderer wanted to do with this button? What was it? To have a memento, to pin the crime, to destroy evidence. It's to pin the crime on guard. The whole point was to frame him for all of this. I do love, oh, it was just a memento, like some sick serial killer. No, it's to pin the crime on guard. There's only one logical reason for doing something like that. It was to pin the crime on Mr. Unguard. There is no way anyone would put a bloody button in their own pants. That's right, Mr. Unguard was set up. By the real killer, of course. And the real murderer is? Well, Mr. Wright, who in the world is the real killer then? Finally. Can't believe I managed to bring this trial all the way up to this point. Phoenix, you can't let your guard down yet. Not until the very end. The real killer, the person who planned to frame Mr. Unguard was... I mean, it has to be Adrian, yes? I'm not overthinking this. The point was to backstab both of them. It has to be Adrian. Take that! Miss Adrian Andrews. I choose you! You are Mr. Corita's killer. What? Order! 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 Mr. Wright! This is a very grave matter! Do you have any evidence that supports your charge? Any evidence? All of the evidence points to Miss Andrews! How preposterous! You can't stick any of that on me! I can't, can I? Would you care to test me? Then what about this knife? The knife was used to stab the victim after he had already been strangled to death. It was used to throw suspicion onto Mr. Unguard, naturally. A knife covered in the defendant's fingerprints could only be taken from his room. And the only one who had dinner with him and knew which knife to take was you. How many pairs of glasses does she have? Then, what about the button that was found in Matt's hakama? This button was removed from the victim's body after he had already died. The only people who could have done so were the person who found his body or the killer. However, if Mr. Unguard was the real killer, there is no way he would have put such incriminating evidence in his own hakama. Ugh. Now it's just getting ridiculous. The only person who could have put this button into Mr. Unguard's hakama is the person who went to wake him from his nap, which is you, yet again, Miss Andrews. I see. What about the empty guitar case? That is also another piece of evidence that incriminates Miss Andrews. That costume was used to hide the real killer's identity as they fled the crime scene. Now, who could have known that there was just such a costume inside the guitar case? It could only have been the person who prepared the costume for the victim. And that person is you, Miss Adrian Andrews. No, But Miss Andrews' fingerprints were nowhere to be found on the guitar case. And it was you that proved that she was not wearing gloves at the time. That's right. That's because she did not intend on leaving any prints. If anyone had found out that she had touched the case, they would have asked her why. So to avoid leaving any prints, she used a towel or something else to open it. But the glass of tomato juice is a different story. Miss Andrews purposefully left her fingerprints on the glass to show that yes, indeed, she was the classic dazed discoverer of a dead body. Ugh! And to top it all off, there's this photo. A photo of the killer as they exited the scene of the crime. No reasonable person on Earth can believe this nickel samurai is Mr. On Guard. He would be much too short for his own costume if it was him. Speaking of how tall people are, Miss Andrews, you're also kind of short in stature, are you not? Please, stop. Well, how about it, Miss Andrews? I've got her this time. Miss Andrews? I refuse to testify. What was that? There's a law. It says I can't be forced to testify about something if it can incriminate me. Well, yes. You are absolutely correct, Miss Andrews. The law does provide us with a way to avoid self-incrimination by allowing a witness to not testify if the testimony can cause damage to themselves. What? Pleading the fifth is not something most people would think to do on the spot! Actually, thinking back to yesterday in Mr. On Guard's room, Adrian Andrews. Yes? Think hard about what we just discussed. Understood? All right. That's it. That's when Francisca planted this idea into her head. She must have told Miss Andrews to not testify if things looked bad. You did a good job proving everything up to this point, Phoenix. But there's still one thing you haven't done. Something I haven't done? What's wrong, right? Are you finished already? Run out of evidence? What's so humorous, Mr. Edgeworth? I'm sure you realize this as well, Your Honor. But everything the good lawyer here has proven up to this point is meaningless. What? Everything you have proven is circumstantial. Circumstantial? Yes, circumstantial. You have yet to provide a single piece of definitive proof. Proof that Miss Andrews did in fact harbor a wish to murder Mr. Corrida. Miss Andrews, did you want to kill Mr. Corrida? I believe this may lead to me incriminating myself, so I will abstain from answering. But Miss Andrews, if you do that, it would be the same as admitting your guilt, don't you think? Maybe so, or maybe not. There's nothing to prove it either way. Besides, you don't even know what crime I would be guilty of due to my silence. No! She's taking that defiant attitude again! Mia, what should we do? Somehow we've landed in the worst possible situation. I think we have reached a certain conclusion at this point in time. Miss Adrian Andrews has refused to testify, and the defense's theory that she is the actual murderer has not been fully substantiated with solid, definitive proof. But that's not true! In this situation, there's only one thing this court can do, and that is to declare a recess. Recess? I request that both the prosecution and the defense look further into this matter. And at tomorrow's trial... Tomorrow?! tomorrow! If we don't get a not guilty verdict today, then... Please, wait, Your Honor, that's not necessary. The trial, please, continue the trial. What are you sweating for? Your client is getting one more day to live, isn't he? That's not it! This isn't about that! Edgeworth, I know you know who the real killer is! Please, let the trial continue! If I don't get the verdict, then Maya... He didn't know? But it's impossible to continue as long as the witness refuses to testify. Now then, this court is... It is not impossible for this trial to continue. Mr. Edgeworth? What are you... It's true, Miss Andrews holds the right against self-incrimination. However, if the topic of conversation were something unrelated to whatever she may be guilty of, then she has no right to withhold testimony. Yes, that is very true, but actually, there's one little thing that I'm curious about. Miss Andrews, when you found the victim's dead body, you poured yourself a glass of juice. Yes? And? I can't help but think how unnatural that is. Usually when one finds a body, they're shaken up, not stirring a glass of juice. So my actions were unusual, but I've already... Before you speak, I want to state that if you have a reason behind your actions, I would like you to testify to that effect. Testify? Your Honor, I would like to request the witness testify again as to what happened when she first discovered the victim's body. Whatever we find out in this testimony should in no way implicate the witness. I don't know what it is about Edgeworth today, but I can't get a good read off of him. Is he friend or foe? I just don't know. The court acknowledges the prosecution's request. Miss Andrews, if you please.